Welcome back into Carroll's Cadence, everybody. The show dedicated to bringing you the most in-depth coverage of Florida football, basketball, and recruiting on the market. I'm Brandon Carroll, and I'm sorry for missing Monday. I actually went to a wedding this past weekend, wasn't able to cover the Gators' loss to Arkansas. And usually Mondays are my day where I recap what went on in the Gators' win or loss. And one, I didn't really get to watch it. I got to watch part of the first half before I had to start getting ready for the wedding. And two, I figured not a lot of you wanted to relive that contest. So I figured, all right, let's just go ahead and push out to Wednesday for my return. And that's what we're doing right here, baby. This month's going to get a little weird, all right, from a scheduling perspective. On Mondays and Thursdays, it'll be regularly scheduled programming with football recaps and previews with the occasional additional topic based off what Florida does on the football field or recruiting. But I just want to tell y'all right now, November's a weird time, all right? It's a weird time for me because not only do we have the closing stretch of the football season, but it's paired with the beginning stretch of the college basketball campaign. So now, as the lead reporter at allgators.com and the main basketball coverage guy at the publication, I'm on double duty. And as a result, November's going to bring a lot of hoops, all right? I'm going to give y'all more in-depth takes and analysis on Florida basketball now that we're in the season. All right. And I'm going to call it Hoops Wednesday. All about Hoops Wednesday here at Carroll's Cadence. A day fully dedicated to coverage of the Florida Gators basketball program and their performances throughout the year. But specifically, Hoops Wednesday will be a November series. All right. So we got 4 Wednesdays in November, I believe. All 4 of them will be strictly dedicated to the college basketball scene. Todd Golden and the boys wearing orange and blue on Billy Donovan Court and elsewhere through the out-of-conference schedule and into the SEC. We got observations and analysis of games, previews to upcoming contests, in-depth looks at players, and much more coming on All About Hoops Wednesdays. So buckle on in, folks. We got a time. Yeah, man, I'm back. And I'm better than ever. And so is basketball. Technically, the first All About Hoops Wednesday started a week ago without the name as I broke down the 2023-24 basketball squad in depth. I went player by player, really, to provide a little season preview of what Florida has now that they have only returned 4 scholarship players and they're looking to kind of rejuvenate the program after another down year in 22-23. And I projected what the season could look like for the Gators and what I believe it'll look like, and saying that this is a team that has Sweet 16 potential. I know it's crazy, but it's reality. Y'all should get that one queued up to watch right after this one. It'll give you a good understanding of the pieces at Florida's disposal this season, as well as a team that differs in year 2 under Todd Golden to really fit his outlook for his squad, the team that he wants to build at the University of Florida, the program that he wants to build. It's all in peace. It's all in place now for Mr. Golden. Many of you will be pleased with my outlook on this squad, and I think it can kind of give y'all somewhere to hide and somewhere to, your safe place, your safe haven, with Florida football potentially being bowl ineligible after the loss to Arkansas with a daunting 3-game stretch against top 15 opponents coming up. So, yeah. So, enough with my long-winded intro. I just wanted to give y'all the basis of what these Hoops Wednesdays will look like, All About Hoops Wednesdays. And as per usual, like this episode, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and ask me a question down in the comments below about this Florida Gators basketball team that you'd like me to answer on the next All About Hoops Wednesday. Let's get this thing popping. On Monday, the Gators opened their season. Loyola Maryland, they got going quickly, got out to a comfortable lead, 19-2, and really from that point forward, they controlled the game from start to finish, and it was a comfortable win for the Gators by 20 points. It was a 93-73 finish, and given the opponent, as y'all well know if you've watched this channel, y'all know it ain't me to come out here and give overarching points or takes based off one sample size, based off of a small sample size, or especially a small sample size against a team like Loyola Maryland. Looks like they could have some impact in the Patriot League this year, but they should not be competing with the University of Florida, especially with the team that Todd Golden has compiled in year 2. But what I will say, what I will come out and say, is I saw a lot of what I expected from this team. I thought there were several positives, including Riley Kugel being a legit star in his first appearance this year. It seemed like he kind of continued the success he saw at the end of last year, had 23 points on 15 shots, 4 assists, 6 steals, and it was just a really efficient night for Riley. I thought that the biggest thing with him is you're starting to see him be able to open up his facilitation efforts more because of the pieces around him. Not only is he scoring, which he does at such a high level, such a great shot creator, but he was also being able to dish it to guys, and it resulted in his 4 assists, and then he was making an impact on the defensive end. So real two-way performance from the Gators star, from the guy that's going to lead this team as far as he can take them. If Florida is able to make that Sweet 16 push or even further, it's because Riley Kugel is playing as if he's a lottery draft pick. That's the case for Florida this season. And really, it came relatively quietly. It wasn't one of his explosive outings where you just know that he's controlling the game at all times, but he was scoring in transition. He was creating for himself, others, turning defense into offense, and just looked as explosive as ever, athleticism-wise, being able to create or separate him from the guys on the court. You just saw him being able to work in ISO, play above the rim, and it always feels like he's just nonchalant in the way that he plays, and that's his play style, but it's effective. It's always going to be a good night when your star player is plus 33 in a 20-point win. That's very, very good. And it may have come against Loyola Maryland, like I said, but he picked up right where he left off last season. He is a top 5 player in the SEC this year, in my opinion. Outside of Kugel, he set the tone. But outside of Kugel, another positive that I took away from this contest is we really started to see Todd Golden basketball emerge. And what I mean by Todd Golden basketball is Todd Golden, despite popular belief, is a defensive-minded head coach. He is keyed on defense. And while they did allow 73 points and they did allow them to have opportunities to kind of get shots up, which is from beyond the arc, I should say, which is not exactly what they want. They used, especially in the beginning of the first half and beginning of the second half, they used their ability to create turnovers and just take the ball away, take possessions away from Loyola Maryland and get out in transition and run. Because Todd Golden basketball, being defense to offense, is going to be a fast-paced style. And I thought that really started to show in night one against the Greyhounds. And then on the other side of the court, on the offensive side of the court, we saw the threat level from the perimeter from Florida be what people have clamored for years. People have wanted them to be able to knock down shots from the perimeter at a consistent rate. And while it might not have came in terms of just like a crazy, they're spraying from 3, you just had several guys at different points of the game being able to knock down shots. It included Julian Rishwain off the bench, he's going to be their 3-point specialist per se for this season. He's going to be complemented by the Walter Clayton Jr. and the Riley Kugel, Zion Pullen when he gets back. And then you even saw guys like Alex Condon and Micah Hanlogton knock down 2. And if Florida's able to stretch the floor like that with their bigs, I don't expect Hanlogton to be able to kind of do that every single night. But now that it's on tape, now that he's shown that he can knock them down, they're going to have to respect the 3-point shot from Florida, from those bigs when they're playing in the pick and roll at the top of the key. And that is something that is very important for Florida moving forward. That threat from the perimeter to be able to knock down shots. And it makes teams step out and it opens stuff up inside. You're able to get slashers. You're able to kind of have Walter Clayton Jr. on the outside facilitating the way that he did. And that brings me into my next positive is Walter Clayton Jr. is going to make this offense tick. All right, it's going to be him and Zion Pullen at the top, at the 1 and 2, interchangeably, whichever, they're not necessarily going to be sat at a specific spot, but you're going to have those two controlling the offense. And Walter Clayton Jr. looks like he is just the perfect all-around guard for this team to make sure that, sure, there's going to be times where they go 3 minutes without scoring. That's natural. That's college basketball. But the 8-minute stretches that Florida's had in the past, I don't think that's going to happen now, or at least it's not going to be a consistent issue, because you have a guy like Walter Clayton Jr. who can, 1, get his teammates involved at a very high clip. He can find Alex Condon at the top of the key, find Micah Hanlogton at the top of the key, and give them the confidence to knock down shots because they're open. Or he's going to be able to drive, get a bucket at the basket, or he's going to be able to pull up and knock down a shot. He does things very, very well that allow this Florida team to tick offensively, and it's something they haven't really had in the past. And then finally, you got Tyreek Samuel, who I think dominated in the post against this Loyola Maryland team. A Loyola Maryland team that I will say, yes, it is a Patriot League opponent. It is not going to be the physicality of the SEC, but for a Patriot League team, they're bigger and they have a roster that is significantly closer to an SEC team than a lot of those mid-major teams would have provided for Florida. I thought they had with Golden DK was a significant impact for the Greyhounds in their kind of surge late in the first half against the Gators to kind of bring it within 12 before halftime. But Tyreek Samuel was very important. I knew that he'd be an important factor down low for this season, but game one was more than I imagined. I knew he was a solid player above the rim, and I knew it would likely lead to him getting some points on the board. But after seeing what I saw there, I think that he's more than just that. He's more than just a guy that can get it done on the block. And yes, I saw him at times. I mentioned it in my observations preview type thing from the fourth open practice of the year, that I thought he was going to be able to be versatile for them, play at the 4 and the 5. He started at the 4, be able to knock down shots from the top of the key like Alex Condon and Han Lockton. He's another one from the front court that can do that. But it just seemed as if his game was more nuanced than I believed initially. It wasn't just at the basket that he had success, knocked down an elbow jumper, showed his ability to connect from the top of the key in that practice setting, was able to kind of be a nice facilitator and open up the offense as a passer. And it was really just an overall good night for the Seton Hall transfer. And it was evident that he was exactly what Florida bargained for when they went into the transfer portal and said, we want a 4 that can be this leader and this someone that is very, very dependable this season. And I think Florida and Todd Golden were able to say, we hit on that. That's their words. I think they have to, obviously it's night one, but I think that they are in a much better position at the 4 this year than they were last year. And then negatives on the other side of the coin. I did think there are a few things that were a bit concerning. Free throw shooting was atrocious. It was horrible. 15 for 30 from the stripe is not good, to put it lightly. That's an area of concern for Florida specifically. I don't think it's something that's going to be a common occurrence. Like you have Walter Clayton Jr., who I mentioned is going to make that offense tick this season, as one of the best free throw shooters returning in college basketball from a year ago, knocked down like over 95% of his free throw attempts at Iona. He missed 3 on night 1, and it was like, okay, so this is an anomaly. Todd Golden did say that there's some concerns for the big guys down low to knock down shots from the foul line, and added that the night 1 woes may have been a byproduct of them playing on a Monday because of the weird schedule that it offers, and having to play on the week or having to practice on the weekend on Sundays with a home football game on Saturdays, yada, yada, yada. But we'll see if the struggles from the foul line is a detriment to this team moving forward. I think it's something that they definitely do need to clean up, especially as they go into play Virginia on Friday, which I'll dive into significantly here in a few minutes. But if it's a problem moving forward, it could definitely be a significant issue for the Gators. It could be something that halts them from reaching that potential, because it seemed as if they were able to get it done in every other aspect. And like I said, this is not me saying, oh, they're here, they've arrived. But it was, you saw a lot of flashes of them looking like a premier basketball team in the SEC, a top 5 SEC team in a conference that goes 10 deep, really, for teams that can compete for a national not national championship, but berth into the NCAA tournament. And so having the ability to knock down free throws in those tight games, not missing 15, not leaving 15 points on the board, that changes this game from a 20-point win to a 35-point win. And in SEC play, that could result in the difference between a 10-point loss and a 5-point victory. So that's very important for them to kind of work on moving forward. And then also, I thought that they kind of laid their foot off the gas just a little bit in the end of both halves. Obviously, a 20-point game felt more like a 40-point game at points. We just have to keep applying pressure. And that's something Todd Golden said post-game. He said that it's in the era of KenPom and net rankings and the ability for teams to get picked based off those metrics for the NCAA tournament. you have to play in a way that is start to finish, foot on the gas the entire way, because stats don't take into account gameplay, game style, game tempo. And if it's between them and a team that is blowing out opponents, blowing out the teams they're supposed to, it could potentially come down to, all right, these teams are beating the bad teams the way they need to. And margin of victory is important. And you just have to kind of realize that. And this team has to continue to keep that foot down and not kind of let it come up as they get a comfortable lead. They opened it up to as much as 26, I believe. Could have went more, but then it started to kind of come off. They went into cruise control, and fine, it was a 20-point victory against a team you should have beat by 20 plus. But at the same time, got to keep that foot on the gas. Got to have that consistent. You're playing in the first 4 minutes like you're playing in the last 4 minutes. And that's how Todd Golden kind of spoke about it in his press conference post game. And then finally, my kind of, I'd say I'm mildly concerned about this. Just after watching this contest, I spoke about Tyreek Samuel and how important he is as the 4, but not having EJ Jarvis, having him retire after initially announcing his transfer to Florida this offseason, I'm mildly concerned about the depth at the 4 spot for the Gators. I think if they do have any type of lull at this point or throughout the season, if there is any time where it's like, okay, this team isn't living up to their expectation or this team isn't living up to their potential, it's because of the lack of depth at the 4 spot. Samuel's more than good enough to provide 30 minutes a night if needed. You can have Alex Condon also play it there, even though I think he's better suited as the 5. And that seemed as if that was the case with Florida, kind of using him in rotation with Micah Henlogton. But with those two, and also having Alex Shimshek being out until December, and then Thomas Howell being ahead of progression, but still not necessarily, in my opinion, I don't know if he's ready to play with the big boys yet when they get into the games against Virginia and the other out-of-conference Power 6 teams or the SEC play. There's not a ton of options for them to kind of lean on at this point. And it just marks the question, can the 4 spot be their Achilles heel this season? They have the backcourt depth. They have depth at the 5 if they need it. They can rotate Samuel there if they need him. They can play Micah Henlogton. They can play Alex Condon. But do they have the pieces to push that 4 spot and let that 4 spot be the floor stretcher that they need it to be? Because that's what Florida wants from the 4 most of the time, is a guy that can stretch the floor offensively and also provide that rim protection defensively. So you have big dudes that are more nuanced than just your average 5s. Your Micah Henlogton, who most of the time outside of this contest, he's kind of restricted to that low post area. He felt good about himself, which is, if that sustains, wonderful. That is a fantastic sign for Florida if he's able to continue knocking down shots the way that he did. But it's not necessarily you're going to depend upon for the rest of the season, making that 4 spot a bit concerning, or just something to keep an eye on at this point for the Florida Gators. And on Friday, Gators are going to get into game 2 and moving on to their next opponent. So they won that game 93-73. They looked good in most aspects, had a few things that, like I said, were negatives, but they're all fixable. They're all things that you can kind of look at and say, okay, none of what they have right now is a complete, season's lost, which is obviously it's game 1. A lot of things that you still need to be seen, but there's no glaring issues. But they're going into a game in game 2 against a Virginia squad, a Virginia program that has been one of the perennial contenders in college basketball for the past 5 or 6 years. Won it in 2019 under Tony Bennett. They become a powerhouse in college basketball in that already fantastic ACC. And you're going into this game looking at these 2 squads. And for me, I'm saying, okay, this is where Florida has a bit of a litmus test to see, all right, where are the Gators at this point? And how much do they need Zion Pullen to bring to the table when he returns from his 3-game suspension to start the season? But Virginia specifically, I want to take a look at Virginia the way I do with football, the way I break down what's going on with football. I want to take a look at what this Virginia team is this season. They lost several guys from 2023 or 2022-23 season. They're replacing 66% of their minutes, 72% of their points, 74% of their rebounds, 61% of their assists. They have one returning starter and just 3 returning scholarship players that played for them a season ago. It's led by Reese Beekman. He's the reigning ACC Defensive Player of the Year a season ago, and he'll be looked to for that continued progression offensively, while also providing the just stellar defensive outings that he did a season ago. He averaged 9 points, 5 assists, and 41% shooting from the. So he was very efficient. Wasn't necessarily their main scorer, but was someone that got everyone involved offensively. He's joined by Ryan Dunn, a kind of a guard, but he plays more as a wing, who saw time off the bench on the wing last season. Has received considerable NBA draft praise coming into this year, recognition for his potential move, mainly because he's impressive physically, has good length, and has a lot of potential as a two-way player. And I'm going to break out my handy dandy notebook here because I was just watching a little bit of Virginia. All right. I sat back. I said, all right, let's check out this team being in that, like Florida, they are vastly reconstructed. They have brought in several new pieces from a season ago, and they're looking to take a step and build through the transfer portal, which is still relatively new for a lot of college coaches, especially one like Tony Bennett, who's had a lot of success bringing in players and home-growing kids to be able to compete for a national championship, earn 1 seeds in the NCAA tournament. So this year, you're looking at a lot of new pieces for Virginia this year. Reese Beekman, obviously, being that combo guard starting at the 1. You have Andrew Rode at the 2. I think it's similar to Florida with those two in that both of those guys can kind of play the 1 and the 2, whether they're kind of playing off ball or on ball. Obviously, Beekman's going to be the primary ball handler, with Rode being the off ball guy, but they're not necessarily limited to doing that. They're not limited to being in the 1 or the 2. It's very fluid backcourt that kind of allows them to play in a style that is significantly different, or it's modern in that, okay, you don't have the ball handler, facilitator, and then the scorer at the 2. No, that's not how things go. It's everyone can do a little bit of everything, which is great for this Virginia team. You have Isaac McNeely, who's their knockdown, lights out shooter at the 3. Obviously, Ryan Dunn at the 4. And then Jake Groves at the 5, who's a transfer from Oklahoma. Played some good minutes for them last season, averaged 6.8 points and 2.5 boards per game in 2022-23. Played against Florida in that Jumpman Invitational a season ago, had 5 points, 6 rebounds, and 1 steal in 35 minutes against the Gators in 2022-23. But you look at this team, you look at this starting 5, and Beekman is the lone returning starter. Dunn and McNeely are their 2 guys that came off the bench in a limited capacity last year, and then Rode and Groves are new to this team. So you look at the bench, and it's all new guys. But what's not new is the defensive theme that they're going to have. It's a defensive-oriented team that plays with the same style of play that they have since Tony Bennett's arrived in Charlottesville. It's a sound man-to-man team, plays very well in help. I think they're a very technical team and a very well-rounded fundamental squad. They are very active on the defensive end, active hands. They're willing to press up and play double in half-court press style, and they carry that activity onto the offensive end. So usually a knock of Virginia squads are that they don't score very often, or they don't score at a very high clip, but it's usually because a lot of their offensive production comes from forcing turnovers and scoring in transition. So they're going to get theirs defensively. They're going to hold teams under 60 or under 55, even under 50 at points this season, and be one of the top 20 squads in the country as a defense, because that's what they always are. That's what they always do. And you have that ability to kind of play defensive-oriented basketball, and it's worked so well for them. But in night 1 against Tarleton, you saw them start to kind of, at least they had a little bit of fervor offensively. They were able to knock down threes early in the contest. They finished 10 of 22, 45.5% from beyond the arc. A lot of defensive into offense. Beekman being the reigning defensive player of the year in the ACC brings a lot of that to the table. He's their leader in that effort and will likely continue to be as the season goes on. They were solid offensively in that contest against Tarleton. They knocked down 48.9% of their shots from the floor. Like I said, 45.5% of their shots from three. They won the rebounding battle 41-30, had 5 blocks, and they were 24 for 39 from the foul line. So another team that missed 15 free throws, like Florida, two teams that are very similar, like I've said several times, with all the turnover, with a lot of the buzz coming in about this team this season, being able to return to that prominence that they saw when Virginia recently saw. And just having troubles in foul shooting, having troubles necessarily in the front court. Oh, is the front court going to be able to hold up come time for March? Just those question marks make these two teams pretty evenly slated heading into this matchup, which I'll talk about in just a second. Beekman being the leader of this team was fantastic offensively, had 16 points and 7 assists to start his season. And really, the overarching takeaways from what I watched when I saw Virginia play was, okay, they're technically sound. They're going to defend without fouling. Shocker. No, something that happens every single year. Always going to defend without fouling. They take care of the basketball. Only had like 8 turnovers in the game. And they just present fluid movement offensively, specifically with the ball. They're always swinging the ball around. It might not necessarily result in points in terms of points per possession because of the stagnancy that we've seen in the past from this team, but it's definitely an interesting style in which they play because they're not going to give up a ton of points. So they only have to score 55, 60 a game, and they're going to be right there to compete with every team that they play. And even with all the new pieces, I don't think that's going to change in 2023, 24. And as a result, this is going to be a test for Florida. And especially because UF is without Zion Pullen. UF is without one of the pieces that they will look to significantly throughout the year. It's a litmus test for the Gators to say, all right, like I said earlier, where are we? Where are we at this point in the season? What does our chemistry look like? What issues do we have that we potentially need to fix going in later into the season? How much does Zion Pullen need to be or need to do for the backcourt to tick at a rate that puts Florida in positions to succeed? And it's something that it's going to be answered on Friday night, or at least you're going to get a little bit of the answer when they play Virginia, because it's the lone team, Power 6 team that they'll see without Pullen in the fold. He returns next Friday against Florida State. So that'll be his first opportunity playing against the in-state rival in Gainesville against that Seminoles squad. It's a guard-centric squad for the Hoos. They start 4 guards across the board, with Jacob Groves being their lone 5 or lone front court member. And it's similar to Florida in that I think because both teams are very guard-heavy in terms of you have Walter Clayton Jr., Riley Kugel, Will Richard, obviously Zion Pullen when he returns, being like the main pieces, especially offensively for that team. Everyone's going to say, oh, this is a guard game. Whichever backcourt can produce at the higher level is going to win this contest. And that very well may be true. That very well may be the ultimate decider of this game is, okay, if a guard takes over, if Reese Beekman goes crazy, or if Riley Kugel produces at the rate that he did in night 1 or towards the end of last season, that could sway this game in either team's favor. And while that, like I said, while that may be true, I see there being more to the story than just that. And I think that could be in Florida's favor because production from the backcourt is going to be required from both squads. Not wanted, required for them to contend in this game. But where Florida, I think, could kind of have an edge is I believe there's a potential to take advantage in the front court, and namely in a physicality perspective with Tyreek Samuel. I think he'll be the threat there offensively for the Gators. He'll be able to kind of bring a bit of a bruiser, old style basketball to this game. I think that there is, like I said, they start 4 guards, the Who's do, and then play a lot, very guard centric. And if they can kind of use the length they have in the front court, the size they have in the front court, with Tyreek Samuel kind of being a bruiser and potentially being a top 2 to 3 scorer for the Gators in this game, I think they could find a way to win it. And not just and if Florida wins this contest, it will be a massive statement to the nation that Florida is potentially on a rapid rise in college basketball. Because Virginia, whether they're new or old in terms of just being a veteran team or a young team or a team that is reconstructed, they are still Virginia. They are still going to be in the mix come March for an NCAA tournament berth and a potential national championship contention because it's Virginia. And Tony Bennett has them boys well oiled. If Florida finds a way to win it, if they are able to produce, I'm not going to sit here and say that I expect Florida to win. I honestly, if I had to pick, I'd pick Virginia just because of the lack of Zion Pullen, not having the full rotation of the backcourt that Florida's going to give teams fits with late in the season or throughout the season at their disposal. I do think that if they do find a way to win it, it will be because Samuel has himself a night. He's able to be a top 2 to 3 scorer for the Florida Gators, and he is a menace inside against a Virginia squad that, like I said, I'm not sure if they had the physicality from their bigs to contend with Tyreek Samuel. Well, I don't necessarily expect them to. I do expect them to contend up until the final buzzer and put themselves in a position to win it. And in my opinion, if they're in it late, if they're in it with 2 minutes remaining or less, that is a win in this contest, not having a guy that's going to be crucial for you throughout the rest of the season. Anything more than that, an upset over Virginia, that's just further indication that this Florida team's legit. This Florida team has got it going. And I think that it's possible. And it would be a resounding statement to the nation that Florida is back on the upward trend. Thank you for watching another episode of Carroll's Cadence. I am Brandon Carroll. I will be here every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday until I decide it's time to hang them up. For now, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and like I said in the intro, drop a comment that you want to know about Florida basketball down below. I'll be back tomorrow, Thursday, for my weekly football preview between the Florida Gators and the LSU Tigers. I'll be hitting the road tomorrow, probably around midday, right around 2 o'clock, to head to Baton Rouge. I'm back, baby. Back in the press box, back ready to give y'all just what I believe to be some good coverage of Florida. If you haven't already, follow me on Twitter at itsbeatcarroll. It is either right there or right there, depending on how they flip this when I get done. I always forget, so just ignore that. But everyone have a great rest of their week. We're at hump day, baby. It is moving quickly. I'm Brandon Carroll, here for Carroll's Cadence, and I'll catch y'all tomorrow.